I had always thought Willow Liu the most beautiful girl at school, and I had feelings for each other. After all, she had given me plenty of flirtatious signals. So even though we had yet to make our relationship official, my family had already invested heavily in Liu Group. However, when I went to pick Willow up from school as usual, I saw her quickly hide her phone the instant she spotted me, as though she had done something she felt guilty about. The next second, a voice that sounded exactly like Willow's thoughts suddenly burst into my mind. Here he comes again. I hate rainy days. Just seeing that stupid umbrella annoys me. Every time it rains, he has to stand so close to me. Doesn't he ever get tired of it? Does George actually think this is romantic? It's seriously disgusting. Chapter 1. My footsteps faltered. Willow walked expressionlessly on my left without even lifting her eyes. But the voice continued. I wonder if Makoto brought an umbrella. He only just recovered from a cold. What if he gets soaked? He lives in the old part of town. The water in those alleys must already be ankle deep. I really want to see him, but George is such a burden. Ugh. I need to find a way to ditch him. My fingers slowly tightened around the umbrella handle. Willow turned her head and glanced at me, her gaze like a pane of glass covered in frost. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing, I replied. I was 7 when I met her, and she was 6. Uncle Liu had brought her to visit my family while the adults discussed business in the living room. My mother told me to take her out back to play. She wore a pale yellow dress, her hair pulled into a high ponytail. Standing beneath the magnolia tree, she tilted her head back and gazed up at the blossoms. Pick one for me, she said. Those were the first words she ever spoke to me. I climbed the tree and picked a flower for her. By the time I handed it to her, my face was bright red. She took it, smelled it, then casually tucked it behind her ear and smiled at me. I carried that smile in my heart for 12 years. I had always believed she was simply aloof by nature, that she treated everyone that way. But now, her thoughts told me otherwise. She wasn't naturally cold. She had simply saved all her tenderness for someone else. Chapter 2. Willow. A clear, gentle male voice came from behind us. I turned around. Makoto stood at the corner of the corridor. Part of his uniform sleeve was soaked, and he clutched a folding umbrella in his hand. One of its ribs had snapped and hung limply like a broken wing. He was breathing slightly harder than usual, as though he had jogged over. Sorry, my umbrella broke. He lowered his head awkwardly, tiny droplets of water clinging to his eyebrows. I didn't want to bother you, but I have some books from the city library in my backpack. If they get wet. Willow turned around. Her expression did not change in the slightest, but I heard her inner voice again. He's soaked. How can someone look this handsome even when he's been caught in the rain? The city library. Did he go all the way there to borrow books over the weekend? He works so hard. No, I can't let him walk home in the rain. She held out her hand and looked at me. Give Makoto the umbrella. It wasn't a request, it was a blunt command. I suddenly found the whole thing amusing. What about me? I asked. She frowned as though I had just asked an incredibly stupid question. Isn't your family's driver waiting at the school gates? It's only a few steps. How wet could you possibly get if you ran over there? Before I could respond, she snatched the umbrella from my hand and passed it to Makoto. Let's go, she said. Makoto glanced at me. It was only for a second, but I easily caught the smugness and contempt in his eyes. Then he looked away, opened the umbrella over Willow, and walked into the rain beside her. I remained where I was. The rain blew in at an angle, landing on my hair, shoulders, and eyelashes. Her inner voice drifted back to me. Finally, I ditched him. Having to walk home with him every day feels like completing some tedious chore. I'm so sick of it. Dad keeps saying the project with the Wang family is still under negotiation and warning me not to offend him. As if I, Willow Liu, have fallen so low that I need to suck up to George. Whatever. I don't want to think about it anymore. Nothing matters more than getting to spend some time alone with Makoto. The voice gradually faded into the distance. The sound of the rain flooded my ears once more. I pulled my soaked uniform collar tighter around myself and slowly walked down the steps. Chapter 3. At the school gates, our driver, Chris, came toward me holding an umbrella. When he saw me walking out of the rain alone, he froze for a moment before quickly raising the umbrella over my head. Young master, where's Miss Liu? Weren't the two of you supposed to? She left ahead of me, I replied. I bent down and slid into the back seat. The air conditioning had chilled the leather upholstery, and I couldn't help shivering when my back touched it. Chris glanced at me through the rearview mirror. His lips moved slightly, but in the end, he asked nothing. The car pulled away. The windshield wipers swept back and forth, breaking the neon lights outside into blurry patches of color. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. Those thoughts began replaying in my mind. Each and every word was so clear that it felt carved into my bones. So it wasn't that she never smiled. She simply never smiled at me. It wasn't that she was quiet. She simply didn't want to talk to me. So, for the past 12 years, the thousands of evenings we had traveled to and from school together, the countless holiday gifts, the medicine I had delivered to her door whenever she was sick, and the handmade photo album I had stayed up 3 nights making for her birthday. Our relationship had been nothing more than an obligation in her eyes, something she had to maintain for the sake of my family's investment. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out and glanced at the screen. Willow had posted an update half an hour ago. There was no caption, only a photo. It showed an alley in the old part of town beneath the rain. Water had gathered on the flagstone pavement, reflecting the lights of the old buildings lining both sides. In the bottom left corner were 2 pairs of canvas shoes walking side by side, one white, one black. My finger hovered over the screen for a few seconds before I turned it off. Chapter 4. When I arrived home, my mother was sitting in the living room reviewing some reports. Hearing the door open, she looked up. "You're back. Where's Willow?" Her mother said she made pork rib soup and wanted the 2 of you to. Her voice abruptly stopped. She stared at my soaked hair and clothes, her brows slowly drawing together. "How did you get so wet?" My umbrella broke on the way. It was a lie, but it was easier to say than the truth. My mother studied my face for several seconds. She didn't press me for an explanation. She simply set down her tablet, stood up, and called toward the kitchen, "Make him a bowl of ginger tea." Then she walked over and wiped the rainwater from my forehead with a tissue. "Go take a hot shower before you catch a cold." "Okay." As I went upstairs, I heard her sigh softly behind me. White steam filled the bathroom as the hot water poured down. I braced my hands against the tiles and lowered my head, letting the water run down the back of my neck. Those thoughts continued echoing through my mind. George is so annoying. I wish I could get rid of him. I'm so sick of this. So someone really could pretend for that long. 12 years. I even began revisiting all those moments I had once believed were precious, the slight curve of her eyes when she gave me a birthday present, her red-rimmed eyes when I was sick, and her pleading voice when she asked me to carry her on my back at the amusement park. What had she been thinking at the time? Probably something like, "Just endure it a little longer. The contract with the Wang family hasn't been signed yet." I turned off the water and walked out wrapped in a towel. My phone screen was lit up. There were 3 unread messages, all from Willow. "Are you home? Were you angry today? Why are you making such a big deal out of it? All I did was make you run a few steps by yourself. You're not a child." I stared at the final message for a long time. Then I exited our chat and opened my conversation with Makoto. We had never spoken before, so the chat history was empty, but his social media posts were visible to everyone. His latest post had been published that evening. Someone once asked me whether living in the old part of town was inconvenient. Honestly, it's not that bad. The alley is long, but at the very end is the riverbank. Every night, a breeze blows in from the river, carrying the scent of water plants. It's been raining lately, and moss has grown between the flagstones, making them slippery underfoot. Someone brought me an umbrella today. As I walked through that long flagstone alley beneath it, I suddenly felt as though the city wasn't quite so cold after all. The accompanying photo showed an open black umbrella leaning against the wall beside his front door. I recognized that umbrella. That very afternoon, it had still been in my hand. Chapter 5. Willow called me 3 days later. That evening, I was playing Go with my father. He had the black stones, and I had the white. The board was covered in intersecting black and white pieces, and we had already reached the end game. My phone began vibrating on the coffee table, Willow's name flashing across the screen. My father glanced at it. "It's Willow. Aren't you going to answer?" "There's no rush." I placed a white stone and captured a large section of his territory in the lower right corner. My father hissed through his teeth and looked at me in surprise. "Why are you playing so aggressively today?" The phone rang 12 times before stopping. 30 seconds later, it rang again. This time, I answered. "George." Willow's voice came through the phone, simmering with barely suppressed anger. "What the hell are you trying to do? What are you talking about? Stop pretending." She let out a cold laugh. "My father just called and chewed me out, saying I was being immature and thoughtless and warning me not to jeopardize something important over something trivial. So, she repeated. "George, all I did was let you get a little wet. Did you seriously run home and tattle on me? Are you 3 years old?" My hand hovered over the board. The stone pinched between my fingers. Then I gently placed it down. "Willow," I said, "do you really think your father heard about it from me? Who else could it have been? You were the only person with me that day. If you didn't tell him, did I somehow report myself? Have you ever considered how many people your father has planted around you to keep an eye on you?" The other end of the line fell silent for a moment. "What do you mean?" "Your family's driver, the housekeepers, and the assistant your father sends to pick you up, which one of them isn't reporting back to him?" I gathered the stones one by one and placed them in the bowl. "Do you really think he doesn't know what you do at school? He simply needed an excuse to warn you. Does it really matter whether that excuse came from me or someone else?" Silence followed. A long, drawn-out silence. So long that I thought she had hung up. George Wang. Her voice suddenly changed, turning cold and sharp. Do you think you're something special? Do you think that because the Wang family is rich and powerful, everyone should fawn over you? I held the phone without responding. She continued, fine. I admit that the Liu family has gained access to some resources through the Wang family over the years, but those were ordinary business partnerships. Your father didn't give us anything for free. The Liu family contributed too. Do you think I actually enjoy traveling to and from school with you every day? If my father hadn't forced me to. I cut her off. No one will force you anymore. What? I said we don't have to go to and from school together anymore. The other end of the line fell silent again. Then she gave a short laugh, as though this was exactly what she had expected. Fine, you're the one who said it. Yes, I am. Don't regret this, George. I won't. She hung up. I set my phone back on the coffee table. My father lifted his teacup and took a sip, looking at me over its rim. Did you two have a fight? No. Then why are you playing so ruthlessly? He pointed at the board. You could have played a quieter move there, but you insisted on going straight for the kill. I looked at the scattered black stones I had decimated and suddenly didn't know how to answer. Dad. Yes. Shouldn't we re-evaluate the Liu family's projects? He set down his teacup and looked at me. There was something in his gaze that I couldn't understand. Have you thought it through? I have. He nodded and said nothing more. Chapter 6. For the next week, Willow Liu and I didn't exchange a single word. Whenever we passed each other in the hallway, she walked straight past without looking sideways, her chin slightly raised like a proud goose. I didn't look at her either. It was difficult at first. After all, 12 years of habits couldn't be broken in a single week. When I reached the stairs after school, I would unconsciously slow down. When ordering lunch in the cafeteria, I would instinctively order an extra serving of her favorite sweet and sour pork ribs. During the school's group exercises, my gaze would still drift toward her usual place in the girls' formation. But whenever that happened, her thoughts would automatically echo through my mind. George is so annoying. It was like having a bucket of ice water dumped over my head. So I would look away and continue on my way. At noon on Wednesday of the second week, I left the cafeteria and walked past the flower bed behind the science building. From a distance, I saw Willow and Makoto sitting side by side on a bench. Her head was tilted toward him, and her lips curved into a smile I had never seen before. It wasn't one of those perfunctory, polite smiles. It was warm and genuine, reaching all the way to her eyes. She was holding a bottle of strawberry yogurt out to Makoto. Try this flavor. I tried several, and this one tastes the best. Makoto took it and lowered his head to take a sip. What do you think? Willow asked. It's a little sweet. You don't like sweet things. I do. Makoto smiled. It's just so sweet that I can't bear to finish it all at once. Willow froze for a moment before bursting into laughter. Her thoughts rang out. How can he say something so adorable? He can't bear to finish it. How can someone like him even exist? Oh my God, I'm dying. I didn't slow down and walked straight past them. From the corner of my eye, I saw Willow's smile stiffen for an instant. It's George. Did he see us? So what if he did? I haven't done anything wrong. He can think whatever he wants. What does it have to do with me? Her final thought faded into the wind. I rounded the flower bed and entered the classroom building. Before the first class that afternoon, our homeroom teacher, Jonathan, called me into his office. George, how have your studies been going lately? Fine. Well, he adjusted his glasses. Did you and Willow have some kind of falling out? I said nothing. Jonathan spoke in an earnest tone. You two grew up together. Whatever happened? You should talk it through. Girls just need a little coaxing sometimes. Sir, I said, could you move me to another seat? He froze. Where would you like to sit? The empty seat beside the window in the last row. That one. It's rather isolated. Are you sure? I'm sure. He studied me for a moment before sighing. All right. You can move during homeroom this afternoon. Thank you, sir. Quite a few students watched as I moved my books. Willow and I had always sat one behind the other. I sat in front, and she sat directly behind me. She had chosen those seats herself at the beginning of the school year, claiming it would make it easier for her to ask me whenever she encountered a problem she couldn't solve. Looking back, perhaps she had simply wanted it to be more convenient to bother me whenever she pleased. I carried the final stack of books to my new desk, pulled out the chair, and sat down. Willow looked up at me. Her thoughts sounded right on cue. He finally moved. At least I won't have to stare at the back of his head every day anymore. Finally, some peace and quiet. Wait, did he move because he saw Makoto and me together? How petty. He can sit wherever he wants. He'd better not regret it later and shamelessly come crawling back. I opened my textbook and began working on the exercises. A breeze blew in through the window, gently stirring the blue curtains. Sunlight slipped through the gaps and landed on the corner of my desk, dazzlingly bright. Chapter 7. After changing seats, the only interactions Willow and I had left were the unavoidable ones. collecting and handing out assignments, group discussions, being called on by the teacher. She acted as though I didn't exist, and I treated her like she was invisible. Meanwhile, her relationship with Makoto became increasingly public. In the cafeteria, she would transfer pieces of braised pork from her plate to his. "You're too thin. Eat more." The tips of Makoto's ears would turn red. "You should eat too, Willow." Then she would smile and take a bite from the apple he held out to her. During PE class, when the boys had to run 1,000 meters, she would wait for him at the finish line with a bottle of water. Makoto wasn't a fast runner and always fell behind the rest of the group. Yet she remained there until he finally crossed the finish line. Gasping for breath, after evening study hall, she would push her bicycle and walk beside him along the road leading from the school gates to the old part of town. Someone took a photo of them walking side by side beneath the plane trees and posted it on the school forum. The title of the post was, "The Campus Belle and the Transfer Student at Sunset." The replies filled more than a dozen pages. "Oh my God, they look so good together. Weren't Willow and George a couple?" Someone replied, "That's ancient history. She likes Makoto now. Honestly, Makoto is way more handsome than George. Poor George. His childhood sweetheart got stolen from him. Another person commented, "What's there to feel sorry for? Look at his face. He always looks like someone owes him money. I'd choose Makoto too. I scrolled down for a while before closing the page. Makoto's birthday fell on a Friday. Willow started preparing for it a week in advance. She browsed through countless pages on an online shopping site before finally choosing a pair of custom-made headphones. 2 ornate letters were engraved on the silver casing. IL. The I stood for Makoto Ito. The L stood for Willow Liu. When she gave him the present in the classroom at lunchtime on his birthday, the entire class fell silent for a moment. "Happy birthday," she said. Makoto unwrapped it and saw the 2 letters. The tips of his ears turned red again. "Thank you, Willow. Try them on." He obediently put the headphones over his ears. She connected them to her phone via Bluetooth and played a song. I didn't know which song it was. I only saw Makoto's eyes curve with delight after he listened to it. "It's that song," he said with a smile. Willow pursed her lips and nodded gently. "Yeah, the one you said you liked last time." Her inner voice sounded incredibly sweet. "Of course, I remember everything you tell me. I packed the textbooks on my desk into my backpack, stood up, and left the classroom. I asked for the rest of the afternoon off. Chris looked surprised when he came to pick me up. "Young master, why are you leaving so early?" "I'm not feeling well. Do you need to go to the hospital?" "No, I just need to go home and sleep." As the car drove through the school gates, I glanced out of the window. The windows of our classroom on the 4th floor were open. The wind billowed the blue curtains outward like a sail. Chapter 8. That weekend, my mother asked me to go to the mall with her. "It's fall. You need some new clothes." She tugged at my sleeve. "Look at this hoodie. The cuffs are already frayed." While I was changing in the fitting room, I overheard my mother chatting with the sales assistant outside. "Exactly. The Liu family's daughter was such a sweet child when she was little. I don't know what happened to her." "What happened?" "I heard she's gotten very close to a transfer student at school. Her father is furious. Mr. Liu put so much effort into securing the project on the east side of the city. And now my husband is preparing to pull out. Pull out of the project?" I don't know the exact details. I only heard my husband say that the Liu family was originally supposed to have a 30% stake in the commercial complex, but Liu Group is reevaluating the deal now. They're also discussing withdrawing their investments from several Liu subsidiaries. Mr. Liu is so anxious that he's broken out in sores around his mouth. The sales assistant clicked her tongue. What on earth is his daughter thinking? Who knows? If she genuinely likes someone else and doesn't like my son, that's perfectly fine. But judging by the way she behaved before, she was clearly stringing George along, keeping him on the hook while getting involved with someone else. My mother paused. "Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore." My fingers stopped on the buttons for a moment. Then I continued fastening them. When I stepped out of the fitting room, my mother looked me over. "This one looks good on you. You look much sharper." "Then I'll take it." On the way home, she suddenly asked, "Is there really no chance left for you and Willow?" "Mom, all right, I won't ask." She patted the back of my hand and turned to look out of the car window. The September sunlight fell across the trees lining the road, dyeing their leaves golden. "You adored her when you were little," she suddenly said in a soft voice. "One time, she had a fever and didn't come to school. After class, you ran to her house and stood outside for 2 hours. Her housekeeper invited you in, but you refused because you were afraid you might wake her. Later, Uncle Liu came home and took you inside. You sat beside her bed without saying a word and watched over her for the entire afternoon." I remained silent. Back then, I thought, once this boy gets married, he'll probably forget all about his mother. "Mom, that was when I was a child." "Yes," she sighed softly. "When you were a child." Chapter 9. The Liu family situation deteriorated faster than I had expected. My father withdrew his investments without hesitation. The commercial complex project on the east side of the city was the first to announce a restructuring. Wang Group transferred its entire 40% stake to another real estate company. Soon afterward, the 3 Liu family subsidiaries that Wang Group had previously funded also received notices that the investments were being withdrawn. The capital market reacted to the news even faster than the companies themselves could. Liu Group's share price fell for an entire week, wiping out nearly 40% of its market value. My mother said Uncle Liu had come to our house several times to see my father. The first time, he brought a newly revised project proposal. My father accepted it but didn't even look at it. The second time, he brought gifts. My father accepted those too, but still refused to review the proposal. The third time, he brought nothing. He sat in my father's study for an hour. When he emerged, his eyes were red. "Come on, old friend," he said. "We can't let the children's affairs ruin our business." My father didn't answer. Willow stopped updating her social media. She used to post almost every day, selfies, food, and photos of herself with Makoto in the alleys of the old part of town. Every post had been polished enough to look like a page from a magazine. Now there was nothing. Rumors also began circulating at school. Some said the Liu family owed money to the bank. Others claimed Willow Liu's credit cards had been frozen and that her father had taken back the car and driver he had arranged for her. She started taking the bus to school. I saw her once. At 7:30 in the morning, she boarded the number 3 bus through the front doors, tapped her student card, and sat beside the window in the last row. Sometimes Makoto would already be waiting for her on the bus. Other times, he would board at the stop near school, and the two of them would walk through the school gates together. They were still together. In the cafeteria, they no longer ordered freshly prepared dishes as they once had. Instead, they bought the cheapest set meals available. Willow would still pick the pieces of meat from her food and give them to Makoto, leaving herself with barely enough to feed a sparrow. She thought, "It's fine, I'll just treat it as a diet. As long as Makoto eats well, that's all that matters. But I'm really hungry." George used to bring me sandwiches between classes, but I never appreciated them. I looked away, picked up my tray, and walked toward the return counter. That afternoon, Makoto stopped me in the hallway. George. His uniform had faded from being washed so many times, and his collar was buttoned up neatly. "Can we talk?" "Go ahead," he sighed. "Willow hasn't been doing very well lately. I know about what's happening between our families, and I know about her father, but those are matters between the adults. None of it is her fault. So," he hesitated, Could you stop being so heartless?" I looked into his eyes. They were clear and filled with the sincere concern of a teenage boy. He probably did genuinely care about Willow. "Makoto," I said, "do you think I'm the one forcing her into this situation?" He shook his head. "That's not what I meant. Do you know why she used to travel to and from school with me every day?" He said nothing. I continued without expression. "Because her father ordered her to maintain a relationship with the Wang family. Because her family needed our money." "So what?" Makoto's voice rose slightly. "Her father forced her to do that. It wasn't what she wanted. Now that she's with me, she hasn't taken a single cent from the Wang family. Isn't that enough?" "It is," I said. "So stay together and be happy. Why are you coming to me?" "Because she cried." Makoto looked at me. "She cried on the phone last night. She said she was sorry for what she did to you." I remained silent for a moment. "She has nothing to apologize to me for." "George." The bell rang. I interrupted. I walked around him and entered the classroom. Chapter 10. Willow Liu came to my house on a Saturday in early October. At 3 that afternoon, I was in my room working through a Cambridge IELTS practice test. I had reached part 4 of the listening section when my mother knocked and entered. "George, Willow is here. She's downstairs." I took off my headphones. My mother added, "Her father is with her." When I went downstairs, Uncle Liu was sitting on the living room sofa. He had lost a great deal of weight. His suit hung loosely on his frame, and most of the hair at his temples had turned gray. A fruit basket and a box of tea sat on the coffee table. Both were exquisitely packaged and had clearly been carefully selected. Willow sat beside him. She wore a simple white dress, and her loose hair covered half her face. I remembered that she had never worn anything like it before. She had always preferred bright colors and bold designs. Hearing my footsteps, she looked up. The instant our eyes met, I noticed the dark circles beneath hers. Then her thoughts rang out again. "He's here. What am I supposed to do? What should I say?" "George." Uncle Liu was the first to stand. He forced a broad smile onto his face. "It's been a long time since I last came to see you. How have your studies been going?" "Fine." I sat down across from them. He rubbed his hands together. That's good. I came here today partly to see you and partly to apologize on Willow's behalf." Willow frowned. "Dad, be quiet." Uncle Liu didn't raise his voice, but his anger was unmistakable. "Do you still have no idea what you've done wrong?" Willow bit her lower lip and turned her face away. She thought, "Here we go again. It's always like this. In his eyes, everything I do is wrong, and everything George does is right. Why? Uncle Liu turned back to me. George, Willow was immature before and did some things that went too far. I'm apologizing to you on her behalf. You two grew up together. After all these years, you can't let one little incident. Uncle Liu, I interrupted. It wasn't a little incident. The living room fell silent. I began. Uncle Liu froze. Heard what? I looked at Willow. Her thoughts. All three of us fell silent. Willow suddenly turned and stared at me, her pupils widening slightly. What are you talking about? It started that day after school, I said. You thought I was annoying. You saw me as a burden. You wanted to find Makoto. You felt that every minute you spent with me was torture. I heard all of it. Willow's voice trembled. How did you? And that wasn't all. I continued after a brief pause. Whenever you received a gift from me, you thought it was just more useless junk. Whenever we ate together, all you could think about was finishing quickly so you could get rid of me. When I was sick and you came to see me, you wondered why the illness hadn't killed me. I heard every single thought. Willow's face gradually turned deathly pale. She thought, how could he know? That's impossible. I never said any of it out loud. How could he possibly know? I really do know, I replied. So there's no need to apologize. It won't change anything. Uncle Liu opened his mouth. George, could there perhaps be some kind of misunderstanding? There is no misunderstanding. Uncle Liu, please leave. George. Willow shot to her feet and cried sharply. Do you have to be like this? Even if I really did think those things, that was in the past. Now what about now? I asked. She stumbled over her words, repeating several times without managing to finish her sentence. Chapter 11. I finished the sentence for her. Now you need the Wang family to save the Liu family. So you think everything you did before can simply be forgotten, is that it? Her lips trembled, but no words came out. If nothing had happened to the Liu family, where would you be right now? Would you be sitting in my living room saying any of this? Something shattered in her eyes. She thought. He's right, I wouldn't be here. If I had any other choice, I never would have come. But what else can I do? Even while Dad was lying in the hospital, he kept talking about the contract with the Wang family. What else am I supposed to do? Willow, I stood up. You never liked me. You've simply run out of options. That's not true. It is. I looked at her, and she looked back at me. After 12 years, this was the first time I had ever looked at her this way, with cold, scrutinizing eyes. You don't like me. The only person you've ever truly loved is yourself. Goodbye. I turned and went upstairs. Her trembling voice came from behind me. George, stop. I didn't. The study door closed behind me, shutting out every sound. News of the Liu family's bankruptcy spread throughout our entire social circle in early November. The commercial complex project on the east side of the city was abandoned completely. The banks called in their loans. The Liu family's business partners filed lawsuits, and every asset in Uncle Liu's name was frozen. Willow Liu moved out of the Liu family villa. Someone saw her dragging a suitcase into an old apartment building near the school. The motion-activated lights in the stairwell were broken, and the peeling walls exposed the mottled concrete underneath. Makoto helped her move. He carried 2 huge woven bags up to the 5th floor by himself, his forehead covered in sweat. Willow followed behind him, carrying a bag of toiletries. Her eyes reddened. Makoto, I must seem completely pathetic now. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to see me like this, but I really. Makoto put down the bags and turned to look at her. What are you talking about? He reached out and wiped the tears from her face. In my eyes, you'll always shine. Her eyes filled with tears. She thought. Thank God I still have him. Thank God. I have to get through this. For him. Willow lost a great deal of weight during that period. Her cheekbones became prominent, and her wrists grew as thin as withered branches. In the cafeteria, she stopped ordering any side dishes. She would only get a serving of plain rice and the free seaweed soup. Makoto would transfer food from his tray to hers, but she refused to take it. After pushing the food back and forth, they would eventually split it evenly. Sometimes I encountered her in the hallway. She would walk past with her head lowered and her books clutched against her chest. Whenever she saw me, her footsteps would falter slightly before she hurried away. I didn't know what she was thinking, because I could no longer hear her thoughts. The ability had appeared without warning, and it disappeared just as suddenly. One morning, I woke up to find that the world had fallen silent again. There were no extra voices, no thoughts suddenly exploding inside my head. There was only the sound of wind, rain, and footsteps, and silence. Chapter 12. Makoto asked me to meet him on the rooftop in late November. The wind was fierce that day, making the bedsheets hanging there snap loudly. He stood beside the railing, his school uniform billowing like a sail. I'm transferring to another school, he said. I looked at him without responding. I'm going back to my hometown. Tuition is cheaper there. He slipped his hands into his pockets. My father asked someone to find me a high school in the county. I'm leaving next Monday. Does Willow know? She knows. He lowered his head. She didn't say anything. The wind swept past us, carrying the chill of early winter. George, that isn't why I asked you here today. He turned to face me. There's something I think you should know. What is it? I'm not from this world. The wind on the rooftop suddenly grew stronger. He smiled. To be precise, I was transported into a novel. You and Willow are both characters in it. I stared into his eyes. He wasn't joking. In the original story, Willow uses you until you lose everything. She only marries you for the Wang family's money. Once she gets it, she divorces you and ends up with the novel's male lead. I froze briefly. Are you the male lead? Originally, yes. He shrugged. But after I arrived, I realized the female lead had been written as both stupid and cruel, while the male lead was unbearably weak. And as for that broken umbrella, I broke it on purpose. He said. I wanted to see whom she would choose. She chose me. And then I realized that you were the only normal person in the entire novel. He laughed. So I used my system points to give you an ability. The thoughts, I murmured. That's right. I allowed you to hear what she was really thinking. Leaning against the railing, he spoke casually. Otherwise, with your personality, she probably could have kept you on the hook for the rest of your life without you ever realizing the truth. I was silent for a long time. Why did you help me? Because. He considered it for a moment. Maybe I simply couldn't stand watching it happen. You're a good person. You didn't deserve to be treated that way. What about Willow? Do you know what she's going through now? Makoto chuckled softly. I do. Bankruptcy. Dropping out of school. Being ridiculed by everyone in her social circle. None of that happened in the original story. Originally, she successfully obtained the Wang family's money and lived the life she wanted. What happens now? Now, he looked up at me. George, I'm leaving next week. After I'm gone, this body will be returned to the original Makoto. He won't remember any of this. So every choice from now on is yours to make. I won't decide anything for you. I simply thought you deserved to know the truth. He took a USB drive from his pocket and handed it to me. The full original novel is on here. Whether you read it is up to you. I accepted it. Its metal casing was cold and surprisingly heavy in my hand. Goodbye, George. Take care. He smiled and turned toward the rooftop door. Just before reaching it, he suddenly stopped and glanced back. By the way, the song Willow played for me on my birthday, you sang it at karaoke once, didn't you? I said nothing, but he smiled. She remembers. She was only pretending she didn't. The door closed behind him. Only the sound of the wind remained on the rooftop. Chapter 13. I never opened the USB drive. When I left school that day, I threw it into the city moat. The silver metal casing flashed briefly on the surface before sinking beneath the water. Ripples spread outward, then gradually faded until the surface was calm again. Sometimes, knowing the truth was enough. There was no need to relive it all over again. Willow dropped out of school in early December. The first snow of the winter fell that day. When she came to complete the withdrawal paperwork, she wore a faded puffer jacket. Her hair was tied into a loose ponytail, exposing a section of her pale neck. She ran into me outside the school administration office. Our eyes met. The hallway was quiet. Snowflakes drifted through the gap in a window that hadn't been fully closed. They landed on the windowsill and quickly melted. She parted her lips. George, yeah. I'm leaving. I know. She lowered her eyes, a tiny snowflake clinging to her eyelashes. I'm sorry for everything I did before. Okay. Silence fell between us. She seemed to be waiting for me to say something, but I said nothing. Willow pursed her lips. Then, goodbye. Goodbye. She turned around and took 2 steps before suddenly stopping. George, what is it? I took the photo album you gave me. She didn't turn around. Her voice was soft, like a feather falling onto the snow. Then she left. The sound of her footsteps gradually disappeared at the end of the hallway. I remained there for a long time. Outside, the snow fell harder, blanketing the entire world in white. Chapter 14. My acceptance letter from an Ivy League university arrived in late January. My mother was so happy that she nearly burst into tears. She turned the letter over and over in her hands, then took dozens of photos and posted them on social media. My father didn't say anything. He simply patted me on the shoulder. After dinner that evening, he did something unprecedented. He opened a bottle of liquor and poured half a glass for me. Try it. I took a sip. It burned slightly. When your grandfather sent me abroad, he poured me half a glass too. My father leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting into the distance. Back then, I thought he was the most heartless person in the world. I was 18, and he sent me across the Pacific alone to a place where I didn't know anyone or anything. What happened afterward? Later, I realized that he loved me more than anyone else in the world. The night outside the window was deep and dark. The winter stars shone brightly. Dad, what is it? What happened to the Liu family afterward? He glanced at me. Mr. Liu has mostly recovered. He took his daughter back to their hometown and found a job as an accountant at a small factory. While he was in the hospital, his older brother transferred away all the company's remaining assets and didn't leave him a single cent. What about Willow? I heard she's working at a bookstore in the county town. She makes $2,000 a month. I said nothing. My father frowned. If you want to. I don't. I interrupted. I lifted my glass and took another sip. I was just asking. He nodded and didn't continue. Chapter 15. 1 week before leaving the country, I returned to school. It was winter break, and the classroom building was empty. Desks and chairs that hadn't yet been moved were stacked in the hallway, covered in a thin layer of dust. I pushed open the classroom door. Everything looked exactly the same. The blackboard, the teacher's podium, and the blue curtains. I walked to the seat beside the window in the last row and sat down. From there, I could see the entire classroom. Willow's seat was in the middle of the third row. Nothing remained on her desk. It was completely bare, as though no one had ever sat there. I remained there for a long time. The light of dusk streamed through the windows, bathing the empty classroom in a warm golden hue. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Makoto, the new Makoto, the one who remembered nothing. I heard you're going abroad. George, have a safe journey. I replied with a simple, thank you. He sent another message. By the way, Willow asked me to pass something on to you. My finger hovered over the screen. She said she remembers when every single photo in that album was taken. She said thank you. And she's sorry. I stared at the screen. The cursor blinked repeatedly. In the end, I didn't reply. I slipped my phone into my pocket, stood up, and left the classroom. My footsteps echoed hollowly through the hallway. Chapter 16. The day my flight departed was clear and sunny. Above the clouds, the sky was an immaculate blue. Sunlight streamed through the window and fell across the tray table, so bright that it was almost dazzling. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. A song was playing through my headphones. I couldn't remember when it had been added to my playlist. The melody was familiar, but I couldn't recall its name. A flight attendant passed with the beverage cart and softly asked if I wanted something to drink. I waved her away. The plane continued eastward, through the clouds, across time zones, past everything I could never return to. I pulled down the window shade. Darkness settled around me, soft and quiet, like the gentle sound of a book closing after its story had reached the final page. But my life was only just beginning.